The world has been talking about the state of Afghanistan recently and continues to wonder what will happen now. And in these reports, the words peace talks are always mentioned. So what are these peace talks and why are they so important? For a long time, the nation of Afghanistan has been trying to settle the war, and the only way to resolve this is to sort out a peace process between the countries involved. However, through the years, it has been too complicated for the country to seek an end to the war because of the sporadic conflicts between the United States and the Taliban. The Afghan peace process is a sequence of negotiations that is dedicated to end the war in Afghanistan that started in 2001. However, for a long time, the Taliban have refused to cooperate. To give you a bit of a background, the Taliban is a major rebellion group in Afghanistan fighting against the Afghan government and the forces of the United States. The Taliban, a militant group that is openly acknowledged as the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, emerged in 1994 after the Afghan Civil War. Taliban is a Pashto word that literally means students, which exactly describes its members upon its emergence. Before, the Taliban group was composed of Afghan religious students who were refugees and fighting during the Soviet-Afghan War. Even before, the group's goal was to establish a government that is strictly based on the Islamic law, and with the presence of the U.S. troops in the country during the beginning of the war in 2001, it became impossible for the group to take over the Afghan government. 2001 to 2007. After the fall of Kabul in 2001, the Taliban surrendered Kandahar, the last major city under its control, in exchange of their then national interim leader Hamid Karzai's offer of amnesty. However, included in the amnesty, Taliban leader Mullah Omar would be able to live in dignity in his native city, Kandahar, and this did not sit right with the United States. Following this, during the Bonn Agreement of December 2001, a series of agreements dedicated to rebuild the state of Afghanistan. The Taliban were not invited to the U.S. condition not allowing the Taliban to participate. Many sources claim that this event ignited the Taliban's reassurance, and a few years later in 2006, a UN negotiator, Lakhdar Brahimi, verified that excluding the Taliban from Bonn was, I quote, our original sin. Following this admission, insurgent attacks in Afghanistan spiked between 2002 and 2006, and towards 2007, Afghanistan was expected to fall into Taliban's control. 2007 to 2010. In 2007, former Afghan President Hamid Karzai, with the support of the British and Pakistani government, offered peace talks with the Taliban. Although because of the presence of former troops in the country, they immediately turned it down. In 2009, after Karzai was re-elected, he continued his objective to make peace with the rebel group. However, his efforts were spoiled after the Obama administration increased the American troops in Afghanistan. But Karzai was not back down. On January 2010, Karzai once again reached out to the Taliban to lay down arms. 2010 to 2016. During this time, the Obama administration had a change of heart and allowed the possibility of negotiations to solve the war. However, it was too late for their decision because the Taliban had also changed their mind. The rebel group refused to make contact with the Afghan government because, as they put it, the government had become an American puppet. However, the attempts for peace talks did not cease. The dispute only grew between the Afghan government and the Taliban by June of 2013. After the Taliban opened a political office in Qatar, Karzai accused the Taliban as a government in exile. Soon after, on July 2015, the Pakistani government hosted the first official peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban, with an attempt to end the 13-year war. A year later, on January 2016, Pakistan hosted talks with Afghan, Chinese, and American officials. However, the Taliban was a no-show. But in the same year, the Taliban did hold informal talks with the Afghan government. It was also in the year of 2016 when the second largest Afghan militant group next to the Taliban, the Hezb-e-Islam Gulbuddin, signed a peace agreement with the Afghan government in Kabul. The motion by the militant group was commended by government officials as they continued to hope the Taliban would also take the same steps towards peace. 2018 to 2021. An increase of violence was seen by February of 2018, although the efforts of negotiation intensified. And finally, on February 29, 2020, the United States and the Taliban signed the agreement of bringing peace to Afghanistan in Doha, Qatar. The deal includes the withdrawal of American and NATO troops from Afghanistan within 14 months, while the Taliban promised to prevent operating in areas under Taliban control. But soon after the agreement, there was a rise of insurgent attacks against the Afghan security forces, and by May to June 2021, almost 800 Afghan civilians were killed. More than 1,600 were injured because of the attacks, resulting to be the highest number with only a span of 2 months recorded by the UN since 2009. And just recently, after the fall of Kabul in 2021, the Afghan government began to negotiate with the Taliban for a peaceful transfer of power to a transitional government, but the Taliban won't allow it as the group desires a complete transfer of power.